market. Book online via the government website coronavirus.gov.pm or call the COVID-19 hotline 444-2498 between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And one of our friendly telephone operators will be happy to make a reservation for you. Or just show up. Getting tested has never been so easy. The pop-up testing schedule can be found at coronavirus.gov.pm. For more information, call 444-2498.
Good evening, Bermuda. I trust that all fathers had a wonderful Father's Day weekend. Today, we will cover a number of topics ranging from the latest COVID-19 testing results, an update from the Ministry of Health, to the strategy at the LF Wade International Airport to protect workers, passengers, and our community as we safely reopen our borders and put our people back to work. Today, I am joined by the Minister of Health, Minister Kim Wilson, President of Skyport, Mr. Aaron Adderley, and also the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Wayne Keynes, is here to answer any questions from the media. Before the Minister of Health provides her updates, I would like to take a moment to address the recent incidents of violence, which disturbed all of us and that community-minded Bermudians find repugnant and universally condemn. We have emerged from a weekend marred by a horrific act of violence committed against a female by a group of males. It is not surprising that many are wrestling with the question of how we can better live in peace with each other on our small island of Bermuda. The violence we see is a symptom of a deeper problem within our society. Whether it is the racial imbalance in employment and opportunities or the racial disparities in wages and life outcomes, the ongoing cycle of violence is a manifestation of hundreds of years of abuse and trauma. Too many of our young men feel disconnected and disenchanted within our society. And around the world, it has been proven that those who do not see a place for themselves or are valued from society will, in many cases, not care if their actions destroy that society. Words do matter, but only to an extent. Continued community action is needed to make our young Black men feel valued and included. Action that creates opportunities for achievement, validation, and positive transformation will help bring our disaffected and disenchanted youth back into the bosom of a loving, caring, and inclusive Bermuda. I am grateful to everyone who continues the work to make this a reality. The government will continue to support those actions, and I know that the Minister of National Security will continue the work in this sphere to tackle the root causes which are manifesting in this abhorrent violence. Now, we'll hear from the Minister of Health on the latest COVID-19 test results and other pressing matters as our ministry keeps Bermuda safe from the novel coronavirus. Minister?
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon. Between Sunday and today, there were an amazing 336 test results received by the Ministry of Health, and none were positive for COVID-19. And this is excellent news for all of us. I am thankful to the whole community for practicing the necessary preventative measures like wearing a mask and washing your hands. And these are the things that we need to keep on doing to control and contain the spread of COVID in Bermuda. Bermuda has 146 total confirmed positive cases, and their status is as follows. There are 5 active cases, of which 4 are under active public health monitoring, and 1 is hospitalized. None are in critical care. A total of 132 have recovered, and the total deceased remains at 9. The average age of all of our confirmed positive cases is 60, and the age range of all of our positive cases is from 18 to 101 years. Overall, 57% of all of our cases are Black, 40% are white, and 3% are other or unknown. The source of all local cases is as follows: 42 are imported, 85 are local transmission with known contact, 12 are local transmission with an unknown contact, and 7 are under investigation. I'm extremely delighted that a few moments ago, before heading out to this press conference, I received word from the Pan American Health Organization that has now designated Bermuda's country status as sporadic cases. This is great news, and we need to be very proud of our efforts. The 7-day average of our real-time reproduction number is below 1. Our reopening scorecard has been updated and will, as recently as a few moments ago, will be updated to show that our current country status has improved again to sporadic. And this new designation from the World Health Organization will be reflected on our scorecard. In addition, I am happy to report that over 8,200 people have registered with the Health IQ app, getting us closer to that 10,000 mark goal. The more people reporting on their status, mask wearing, and physical distancing, the stronger our position will be as we approach phase 4. I can share with you that as of today, summer camps will now register online to provide the Ministry of Health and the Department of Youth and Sport information about their staff, children, and the programs that they run. This information will be critical for infection control as well as quality control of camps in the future. While these settings are not formally regulated, parents can be assured that if the camp name appears on our registration list, they will be monitored to ensure compliance with our health guidelines. Camps will now be able to begin the registration process on the school, child care, and camp web page on the government portal, and parents will also be able to visit the list of registered camps on the same page at the end of this week. I now want to draw your attention to some of our phase 3 and 3B guidance and directions, which have been recently created and posted to the government website at coronavirus.gov.bm. In particular, I'd like to go over a few points concerning indoor dining directions. Now that we have had a couple of weeks in phase 3, some of you may have already had an opportunity to go out for a meal. You may have found certain things unfamiliar or even odd. For those who have not yet experienced indoor dining post shelter in place, here are a few things that you should be prepared to see during your dining experience. Firstly, booking ahead is highly recommended, while walk-ins will be recorded and regulated. You will notice that all staff will be wearing masks at all times. And as a guest, you must also wear a face mask whilst waiting to be seated and at all other times when you are not at the table. And to protect your server or other restaurant staff, you should also wear your mask when interacting with them. Remember that the droplets that spread COVID do not disappear when you sit down. If you are speaking to someone within 6 feet of you, wear a mask. Physical distancing of at least 6 feet must be maintained during any waiting or queuing, and you must use the hand sanitizers provided before entering the establishment. You'll be greeted at the door by a dedicated staff member and only granted access if safe to do so while adhering to the rules of physical distancing. This will be particularly important at establishments that have narrow entranceways. In particular, you will not be allowed to enter when others are leaving in order to avoid close contact. Businesses are recommended to monitor the health of staff and diners. Therefore, your temperature may be taken and recorded. Managers will also have the rights to remove guests who show other signs of COVID-19, like coughing or sweating, at their discretion. Dining establishments have systems in place to ensure adequate physical distancing within restrooms, and this may, in many instances, allow only one person to use the restroom at any given time. Please be prepared for this. Restaurants must enforce this, so please do not give staff a hard time if they do. They are only following the rules and trying to keep us all safe. Contact tracing is an essential part of combating any outbreak of communicable disease. Therefore, the contact details of one of the primary diners will be recorded and include the date and time of your visit, your full name, your address, your phone number, and your email address. There will be a mandatory space of 6 feet between tables or physical barriers in place when 6 feet is not reasonably practicable. A few other things that have also changed are: the menu may look different than it used to. We are asking restaurants to provide you with single-use, washable, or digital menus. There will be no direct service at bars. There will be no self-serve salad or buffet bars. Food must only be served by the chef instead of self-service buffets. Packaged cutlery and single-use condiments can be provided to you if you like. E-receipts will be offered in place of paper ones. Napkin service is suspended until further notice. In other words, no one will be placing the napkin on your lap. This guidance and many others can be found again at our government website at coronavirus.gov.bm. As I close, I want to remind the public of the COVID-19 pop-up testing that's taking place around the island this week. On Wednesday, June 24th, testing will take place at the Hamilton Cathedral from 11:30 a.m. till 2 p.m. and then again from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. There will also be pop-up testing at the Herring Bay Marketplace also on Wednesday from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. On Thursday, June 25th, there will be testing at the Southside facility from 10 a.m. till 7 p.m. and also at the Shelley Bay Marketplace from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And on Friday, June 26th, pop-up testing will again take place at the Hamilton Cathedral from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and at the Somerset Marketplace from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. At Thursday's press conference, I will also give a reminder about the locations for this week's and this weekend's testing. In order to ensure that wait times at pop-up testing venues are as minimal as possible, again, I encourage you to not only get tested, but also please ideally book an appointment in advance. And this makes it much faster and much more convenient for you. You can book online via the government website at coronavirus.gov.bm or call the COVID-19 hotline at 444-2498 between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. to make a reservation. Again, a full schedule of the testing days and times is posted on the government website. And for more information about pop-up testing, you can call 444-2498. Thank you once again, Bermuda, and please wear your mask and keep 6 feet apart from other persons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister of Health. And it is great, certainly, to hear inside of your update today that Bermuda's status has been upgraded by the World Health Organization to sporadic cases, up from clusters of cases. It will take a lot of work and effort to keep us there as a country, but it's important, Bermuda, that you adhere to the health guidance which has been given and continue to do what is necessary to protect you and your families so we can keep the transmission of this virus at a minimum. The reopening of LF Wade International Airport is a critical part of getting Bermudians back to work. Yet we recognize that we cannot open the airports until we're in a position to protect our Bermudian workers at the airport, protect our hospitality workers, and protect the people who enter our jurisdiction. Today, we are joined by Mr. Aaron Adderley, President of Skyport, who will provide an update on the procedures being put in place at the airport for the benefit and safety of all. Mr. Adderley?
Thank you, Premier. I want to walk everyone through the various different measures that we have at the LF Wade International Airport, measures that are designed, as the Premier pointed out, to protect this, to ensure rather the safety of both passengers and employees. And I'll attempt to go stage by stage, not only through the departures process, but also through the arrivals process. But before doing so, I believe it's important just to point out that the measures that we have identified for implementation at the LF Wade International Airport have essentially been guided by various different organizations that exist within our space. First of all, the Airport Council International, or ACI. The second organization is the International Air Transport Association, or IATA. And the third organization is ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization. ACI is the representative body for airports around the world, for which the LF Wade International Airport is an executive member for our region, Latin America, Caribbean. IATA is representative of all the airlines around the world. And finally, ICAO is essentially the regulatory authority for airports globally. Essentially, they define the guidelines and principles and recommendations by which airports are to operate. So with that said, I'll start off on the departures end. And the first thing I want to point out is that in order to safeguard passengers and employees as much as possible, only traveling passengers will be allowed inside the terminal building. So passengers must show their travel documents at a door check process that will be implemented come July 1st or July 2nd, rather, which is the date that we are expecting our first commercial scheduled arrival. Secondly, of course, as the Minister of Health has often pointed out, face masks will be required at any point in time whilst inside the terminal building. Let's move to the check-in process. In order to minimize face-to-face contact with airline agents, passengers are encouraged to check in online or by using the self-check-in counters, which have been strategically positioned at the westernmost end of the terminal building. And we will encourage all passengers to use the hand sanitizer stations that will be there available prior to using the kiosk during each transaction. The processing by airline agents to take place behind plexiglass shields. Those shields have been installed at a number of the airline check-in counters throughout the check-in area. We are encouraging or requiring passengers rather to follow physical distancing markers that have been placed to ensure safe queuing whilst in the check-in concourse area. When we move to U.S. pre-clearance, for those, of course, passengers who are departing for the United States, passengers enrolled in the Global Entry Program are strongly encouraged to use the designated self-check-in kiosk. Again, the objective is to try and minimize the amount of interaction, face-to-face interaction between passengers and airport personnel. So to that end, if you are a member of the Global Entry Program, you are strongly encouraged to use those designated kiosks. Also, we will have in place physical distancing markers, again, to ensure safe queuing where and when possible. Processing by CBP agents will take place, once again, behind plexiglass shields that have been installed at each one of the various different workstations in the CBP area. Once we leave U.S. pre-clearance, we make our way to the security processing area or central screening area. Security bins will be disinfected and available for placement of personal belongings. We are requiring, once again, passengers to follow strict physical distancing markers, which will be in place, again, to ensure self-queuing. Now, for those of you who traveled through Lafayette International Airport, you will know that the security processing area is one of those crunch areas where there is a natural cluster of people. And so while we will try to ensure that persons are maintaining the 6-foot distance, it is inevitable that people will fall within those distancing requirements. That's okay. The objective for us is to ensure that that line moves as quickly as possible. So when instances arrive where one is inside a 6-foot distancing distance, rather, we try to just keep them moving. Elevator usage will be limited to a maximum of 2 persons at any one time. So appropriate signage has been placed throughout the terminal building at the various different elevator locations. Once we make our way upstairs into the departures lounge, again, physical distancing markers have been placed to ensure self-queuing. For parents, please note that the children's playpen and book zones have been removed, and we are strongly encouraging parents to ensure that they have whatever materials and devices that are necessary to entertain their kids whilst waiting for their departure. So once again, the playpen and the books, the libraries have been removed. Restaurants will be providing rather grab and go items for sale. And finally, we are strongly encouraging cashless transactions at all time, both in the restaurants and in the duty-free shop. Now, when it comes to boarding, we are asking passengers as well as our airline partners to ensure that we avoid clustering at the boarding gates by queuing only in designated areas. And we have put in place these designated areas to ensure that you do not have that natural clustering that takes place, for those of you who are familiar with upstairs, around that moon gate area. So we are asking passengers, please, to remain seated until your group numbers are called. And we are asking our airline partners to strictly enforce this boarding process so that we do not find ourselves in a position where we have clusters of passengers getting up at the same time, waiting to board their flights. We are asking passengers to readily display travel documents at the various checkpoints, again, to minimize the need for agents and airport personnel to handle those documents themselves. And once again, follow physical distancing markers to ensure self-queuing. So that's the departure side. So I'll shift gears a bit and talk a bit about the arrivals process. As has the Premier has pointed out, all arriving passengers will undergo COVID-19 testing upon entering the terminal building. So once you deplane the aircraft, you walk into the terminal building, and we will have provisions in place for Department or Ministry of Health officials to administer the COVID-19 test of all arriving passengers. Again, face masks must be worn whilst deplaning and also upon entering the terminal building, and must remain on whilst in the terminal building at all times. Having completed the COVID-19 testing, we'll make our way into the immigration hall, at which time we are once again asking passengers to follow physical distancing markers, again, placed to ensure self-queuing. We are asking them to use hand sanitizer stations that will be located throughout the terminal building, and the processing at the immigration counters will take place behind plexiglass shields. Again, that is designed to ensure the safety of both airport personnel, immigration and customs agents, as well as our arriving passengers. Once we pass through immigration, we make our way past the airport duty-free store on arrivals. And here too, we are strongly encouraging that cashless transactions take place. We make our way into the baggage claim area. Like the security area, this is one of those general areas where clustering tends to occur. We are once again asking passengers, however, to follow the physical distancing markers that have sure that you can safely wait for your bags to arrive. All checked bags will be disinfected before being placed on the conveyor belt for collection. We make our way into the customs hall. We are asking all returning residents to make cashless transactions again when making their duty payment. So either utilizing the ATM machines or utilizing credit cards at the cash window. Once again, follow physical distancing markers that have been placed to ensure safe queuing. And finally, we make our way outside of customs. And for those there waiting for ground transportation, please note that persons meeting arriving passengers will outdoors, as the interior meet and greet area will be closed. So we're asking persons to wait at their vehicles and come forward when they see their loved ones arriving or coming through the arrival doors. Those with prearranged transportation will be directed by traffic officers to their waiting drivers. So once again, we are asking folks to try and avoid clustering outside of the terminal at the arrivals curbside. All of these protocols will be posted on the Bermuda Airport website. That's bermudaairport.com. Also skyport.com. Either address will take you straight to these protocols. They are there. Please review them if you are planning to travel at any point in time. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Adlin. I know that many Bermudians are concerned about the reopening of our borders, especially with the news that other countries do not have rigorous controls in place that we have established in Bermuda. Increases and spikes in other places are cause for concern, but I am confident that our regime is robust. In Bermuda, we do not have a mass tourism market, and as is being stated, though the airports are going to reopen, the flights are going to be slow to pick up. So I'm certain that the month of July will allow us to continue to streamline our process. But with the testing requirements before persons board the flight, in addition to testing on arrival, we're confident that we'll be able to keep the country safe. The Cabinet Committee on Reopening the Economy met earlier today and will be making a recommendation for Cabinet's consideration tomorrow. Full details regarding Phase 4 will be shared at this press conference on Thursday. However, at this time, we are still on track for phase 4 to commence at the expiration of the state of emergency next week, Wednesday. Last week, Thursday, when reviewing items in phase 3B, I left out changes that were in law to allow community clubs and members clubs to provide outdoor bar services. These clubs are a linchpin in the social fabric of our community and serve as meeting places, sports centers, and home to good food and fellowship. In keeping with what was done for other establishments, community clubs and members clubs were included in the last round of amendments for phase 3B, and as of last week, Thursday, were allowed to operate on the same basis as bars, providing outdoor service if they held a liquor license. The regulations required that tables be at least 6 feet apart, or where that is not reasonably practicable, separated by barriers of at least 6.5 feet high. No group at any one table should exceed 10 persons, and no group should exceed 20 persons in total. No customer shall stand at the bar or elsewhere, and indoor areas of the bar shall remain closed. Access to toilets are permitted in accordance with the directions issued by the Minister of Health. I would like to apologize for missing this on Thursday, as I know I got a number of questions afterwards, as I promised the week before that those would be included in phase 3B. They were actually included in the changes that were made by the governor last week, Thursday. However, I did not include them in my remarks, and therefore I apologize. Just a few more announcements before we take questions. I've been informed that Dr. Karika Weldon and the team at the Bermuda Government Molecular Diagnostic Lab have launched a WhatsApp service. This will be similar to the government WhatsApp service and will provide updates and provide answers to questions and queries from the public. To get in touch with this WhatsApp service, please add 441-500-1982. I'll say that one more time, 500-1982 to your contacts and send them a WhatsApp message to sign up for the service. And, of course, the government WhatsApp service continues to provide information to the public. And I encourage everyone, if you have not yet signed up for the government's WhatsApp service, please add the phone number 504-6045 to your contacts and send us a message, a simple message that said hi, and you will receive updates from the government. I'm now happy to take any questions from members of the media at this time.
Good evening. Premier or Minister, I don't know who's going to take this question, but we've just heard from Mr. Adderley from Skyport, plans for departure and arrival. When the pandemic first hit, customs officers were not happy with the measures in place to protect their safe and healthy. Has consultation taken place with customs officers about these new stipulations?
The Bermuda Department of Customs are valued members of the Bermuda government. Over the last few weeks, as you are aware, Trevor, we have had a number of flights come into Bermuda, and we've been able to fine-tune a process of which the Customs Department have been a part of. And the arrivals, we've done everything possible to make sure that the plexiglass is in place, to make sure that our customs officers are protected. As you heard, when indeed they're in the baggage hold and they are going through going and searching bags, they will be provided with face shields and the necessary PPE kit. We believe that with all of the processes and procedures in place, that this will be something that will be suitable for our customs officers. In the next week, we have had the opportunity to see the plan, and I'm sure the Collector of Customs will walk through the plan with the customs officers, and they will see that there are the necessary safety precautions put in place to ensure that their safety is paramount.
Thank you. Premier, this question is for you. Last week, I asked you about hotel bookings, and you told me you will make contact with the BTA. Having the Princess will not be opening until August, I've been told. It's also believed that Abu Beach will not be opening until September. Are you still on the opinion that we will be having a tourism season, or would you consider this season over?
I certainly don't consider the season open because the airport is going to reopen in July. There will be visitors that will visit our shores in July, August, September, October, and continuing. And that will happen with the protections of which we put in place. I will compare that against the prognostications from some that said that we would not be having tourists until next year. So we are working hard to make sure that we can provide a safe environment for travelers while also making sure that we keep our country safe. And I happen to believe that Bermuda will be an excellent example and representation on how you can do this well. And the government is working day and night with our partners, not only at the Bermuda Tourism Authority, but also at the airport to make that a reality.
Thank you, sir. My next question for you again, sir. Excuse me. The speculation on whether the government will call an early election is growing each day. Even the opposition has weighed in. Do you care to dispel the predictions of the pundits and others, Premier?
The only people talking about election are the One Bermuda Alliance.
Thank you, sir. My next question is, are you aware that people are still being paid unemployment benefits and have reported back to work? I've heard that construction workers are being paid and they've been ordered by their employers to return the funds. Who in the workforce development, do we have a system in place that deals with the checks and balances of these errors that are occurring?
To answer your question, yes, we do have a system in place. However, with the volume and speed of which we've been able to get these payments out, there are some errors which are being reported, and those things are being followed up by the joint effort between the Ministry of Labor and also the Ministry of Finance. I believe that the Minister of Finance has actually answered some questions in Parliament and had identified and noted that there were certainly some errors which have happened and occurred, and that will happen when you stand up a system as quickly as we have in order to make sure that we provided relief to persons who needed relief as they were unable to work due to the shelter in place and the closure of businesses. But I would say that those things are in the minority, not the majority. Those particular instances, in some cases, have been found and have been addressed. And I know that the Ministry of Finance, in addition, combined with the Minister of Labor, I know that they had another meeting today and are making sure to work through those processes. But I think that those are far less now than they would have been before, and those processes continue to ensure that we are taking full account of those particular funds.
Thank you. My next question for you, sir. Again, it's been brought to my attention that across many industries, waiters, chefs, private school teachers, where work permits were denied, the employers have decided not to appeal and not to hire anyone. The result of this means that hundreds of landlords will be without tenants and the government loses tax revenue. Was this decision to deny work permits thoroughly thought through, because it would appear that Bermuda and the Bermudians is the real losers?
Well, those would be the opinions of some, Trevor. I'm not entirely certain whose opinion that would be. But I think from the perspective of the government of Bermuda, we've been very clear in our position on these particular matters. The position is very simple. First, that Bermudians must come first in their own country. The Minister of Labor, who was here last week, had set out precisely the process for any employer who feels that a decision that was made was not in the best interest of their company, that they can go ahead and appeal that decision. However, what I would say is if persons were denied work permits, and if those persons have decided that they do not wish to appeal and do not wish to hire Bermudians, then I think it proves that the Minister of National Security at the time may have made the correct decision.
Thank you. My last question. Union members are being asked to take a pay cut. MPs have taken a pay cut. Premier, have you consulted the governor or the deputy governor to take a pay cut in line with the government ministers?
I have not consulted, but any changes that are made to PS scales will apply to all of those particular PS scales. So that is it. And I think the governor had indicated to me that any deduction would be taken by himself as well. So I don't believe that is an issue. But I want to make sure that we are framing this correctly, because it is very important. And a press release went out, I'm sure it's members of the media, with an open letter, which came from the Minister of Finance, which is going to all government employees. I do not wish to classify this as a pay cut. It is savings. There is no public officer that will take home less money than they are taking home now. And it is very, very important that that particular point is made very clear. So I don't want it to be said that persons are going to be taking home 10% less money. It is not 10% less money. The agreement that was come to, that was pushed forward from the government of Bermuda, was something that will leave public officers taking home the exact same amount, or sorry, not taking home less money than they are taking home at this point. There is a range of measures which were put in place, which are to save the government $150 million in expenses to allow us to make sure that we can maintain a decent fiscal balance this year while providing for the necessary items, whether that be unemployment benefits, the spending on healthcare, which is needed, the additional funds that are needed for PPE and other items. So that is what we are working through. And I do not want it to seem as though public officers will be taking home 10% less. There is no public officer who will be taking home less funds with the proposal that is going forward from the government to the union membership for ratification. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Good evening. I'm Fiona McWhirter from the Royal Gazette. Mr. Adderley, if I could start with you. How many flights and passengers is the airport expecting, perhaps over the months of July and August? Have you got figures for those?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the one consistent part of forecasting by a number of the airports has been that each one of those forecasts have been unreliable. It's very difficult. We are very much in uncharted waters. That being said, we have taken a stab at doing what I would refer to as internal forecasts. We've looked at the provisional schedules that have been put in place by the airlines for July and for August. The conclusion is that July would be a very slow ramp up. Things will pick up a bit in August, but we will never get back, at least this summer, to the pre-COVID levels. That being said, the good news is that we expect short-haul travel to pick up quicker than long-haul travel. So I think this is a prime opportunity for all of our stakeholders, of course, led by the Bermuda Tourism Authority, to take advantage of our geographical location, to take advantage of the good news that the Minister of Health has just shared with regards to our success in limiting the transmission rather of this virus. And I think those elements combined stand to point toward optimism when we talk about forecasts moving forward. But again, I think it would be remiss of me to attach any figure. I would much rather leave those for internal discussions. But needless to say, we are very hopeful that things will ramp up slowly but surely.
Maybe in a similar vein, and it might be a similar answer, but looking towards the rest of the year, throughout the rest of 2020, have you got any idea at all about what air arrivals might be like?
Again, I don't, but again, I am encouraged by the fact that we stand to benefit from short-haul traffic. And all industry experts are predicting that short-haul traffic stands to recover at a quicker pace than the long-haul travel. And so when we look at our markets within the United States and within Canada, and perhaps to a lesser extent within the UK, I think we're poised to benefit from those who are looking to get away because they've been sort of suffering from cabin fever for the past 3 months rather. So seems like 3 years, but we will be encouraged, and we are working with our airline partners and with our industry stakeholders to try and ensure that we have as quick of a ramp up as we possibly can.
Thank you. And can you give us any update on the opening of the new airport? How much has that been impacted by restrictions over the past few months?
So we were very close. We were on schedule. As many people know, we were targeting a midsummer completion. And we were very much on track for that. But unfortunately, the shutdown of international borders, not just Bermuda borders, but international borders, has limited our ability to bring in the respective technicians that are required to complete the testing and commissioning phase of the various different systems and mechanical systems rather that are in place within the new terminal building. So all of that has been put in place. The installation is complete, but it's the testing and commissioning phase that has been delayed as a result of the COVID-related border closures. That being said, we are working very hard to try and complete the testing and commissioning phase. We are working very hard to try and complete the last 4 or 5% of work that is required for completion of the fit out, the base build out rather, and we're hoping that we can get everything done by the end of the year.
The end of the year.
So that's what we're working toward. But again, that is dependent on a number of different external variables that are quite frankly beyond our control. So that being said, we're going to work very hard to try and ensure that we get the terminal building up and running as quickly as possible.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We've heard that there might be some consideration being given to a change to the testing requirements for people coming onto the island. Has that so? Is there any indication that the 72-hour time frame might be changed at all?
As the Premier said, and that's an important point to note, but the Premier did indicate that those decisions are going to be, the subcommittee met today and for quite a lengthy time, and those recommendations will be presented to the Cabinet tomorrow. And on Thursday's press conference, more details will, at the latest, will be revealed concerning the reopening and the testing regimes associated with that.
Understood. Thank you very much. And with regards to, we heard tonight that the Pan American Health Organization has said that our status now is sporadic cases. Is it realistic for us to expect that that might continue when the airport reopens and commercial flights resume?
That is an important factor that we need to consider. However, part of the deliberations with respect to the subcommittee and what will be discussed tomorrow at the Cabinet table will be what measures and mitigations will we put in place to try to, as best as possible, to curtail the spread and the importation of COVID-19 once our borders open. As the Premier has previously indicated, we have the challenges with respect to COVID, but on the other hand, we also have economic impact that is also being factored into. So we have to strike the right balance. And we are satisfied that the recommendations that will be presented tomorrow at Cabinet will do just that, ensuring that our public health mandate as it relates to trying our best to mitigate the spread and importation of COVID is maintained first and foremost.
Thank you. And I think you raised some concerns last week, Minister of Health, with regards to mask wearing and physical distancing. Are those concerns still there in terms of what you're seeing in public, or what you're led to believe is happening in public, or are people maybe paying a bit more attention? Well,
the indicator was as of last week on the 15th. The new indicator came out today, and we are seeing marginal improvement, but the issue concerning physical distancing and the continuation of mask wearing is, of course, a paramount consideration and concern. And we need to ensure, as we move to phase 4, that persons can operate with those mitigations in place, or we will not maintain our country classification, as I've just announced by PAHU, because we'll see more episodes of COVID-19 positives.
Understood. I appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
If I may just add one thing to what the Minister of Health has said, because I think that's very, very important. And it's a message which we repeat here often, but it's something that has to be remembered. This progression of which we've been able to make is only because of the strong collective work of all of us. And I know that people are tired of wearing masks. I know that people are tired of doing these particular things. If we do not do them, we will end up going backwards. And the last thing we want to do is to end up going backwards instead of maintaining our new normal. So it is absolutely critical, as the Minister of Health has indicated, that continue and persons remember that our collective progress is only because we've been able to follow those rules and do that good job in minimizing transmission. When we let our guard down, we will run the risk of going backwards.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Maya Palacio for Media Maya. My first question goes to Minister Wilson. On Friday, June 19th, you mentioned and reported that Bermuda had 2 new COVID cases. I'm wondering if we could know how those cases were contracted.
With respect to the measures of contact, one of them is still under investigation, and the other one was an imported case.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
My next question goes to Mr. Adderley. With the impact to visitor arrivals due to COVID, will Skyport require the government to pay the minimum revenue guarantee?
I was expecting that question. We are in discussions at the moment with the Airport Authority and with the Ministry of Tourism and Transport, and it would be remiss of me to sort of comment on that before we've had a chance to exhaust those conversations. We are following a process that has been defined within the project agreement, and we're trying to adhere to that process. That being said, I think it's of no secret that the business model upon which this project has been built upon centers around our ability to generate revenue through passengers coming through the terminal. And for the past 3 months, we have been operating at near to a zero revenue situation. That being said, I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to turn things around and come out of this stronger than before. One of the other provisions that are in the agreement is a provision for revenue sharing. So while much of the attention has focused on the downside protection elements that are there, i.e. the guarantee, there is also a provision for upside revenue sharing. And so while we would have never expected to be in this position where we have a once in a century pandemic that has had a significant adverse impact on not only our airport, but airports around the world, it is a long-term agreement. We forge very good working relationships with our partners at the Airport Authority and within the ministry. There are, 25 odd years left on our term, and we're very confident that during that time, things will turn around and we'll get to a position where rather than having discussions about what sort of checks government is cutting to pay for the lenders, we'll be talking about conversations, or we'll be having conversations rather surrounding checks that Skyport can be cutting for the government in terms of the revenue sharing aspect. So we're smack in the middle of reviewing the process with our industry stakeholders, specifically the Airport Authority and the ministry, and I'm sure some sort of statement will come out at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
My next question will actually go back to you, Minister Wilson. Some Bermudian citizens are asking, when will the testing move to saliva and not the nose?
The important fact about that is that the government has, as we've indicated, previously indicated that we are going to be getting the saliva testing. The expectation is that it will be able to be ordered by the end of this week. We're actually waiting for the bidding process, so to speak. We have to get 3 quotes. We've completed that exercise. We're waiting for wire instructions, which as of a couple hours ago, we were waiting for that to be received. It may have been received by now already. We will continue. We will immediately order them, and they will be here very, very shortly.
Thank you very much. Now, my next questions or set of questions relates to another health issue the world and Bermuda faces. This is racial injustice. So, Mr. Premier, you mentioned last week actions your party made in Bermuda for the sake and the name of social injustice. So these questions were sent to me by inmates at Westgate facility through a lawyer. First one is for Minister Keynes. Why aren't inmates, as citizens of Bermuda, allowed to earn a degree while in Westgate or further pursue a trade?
If I may, just before you start, Minister Keynes, I think that it's very important to make the distinction, and I'm sure it was unintentional on your behalf. You said that what I had stated was what my party, these are government press conferences, and it's what is done by the government of Bermuda. My party happens to be in office, but it is in the name of the government of Bermuda and the change in which we make. It would be inappropriate for me to mention party items at a press conference. So I just want to make sure that we keep that line there. So it's what the progress that the government has made during its term in office.
Thank you. So I'll clarify that it's from the government and not the party. I apologize.
Ms. Palacio, I would be the first to say, I've spoken to the Premier last week, and my emphasis going forward will be on a number of things at the Westgate Correctional Facility and in the correction system generally. I'll be the first to say that we can do better with reference to programs in the prison. We have programs and programs do exist, but I believe that we can and must do better. With reference to people getting degrees in prison whilst incarcerated, that is something that has taken place in the past. We need to look at the education programs as they currently exist, and we need to make them more robust. Incarcerated men and women should have the opportunity to equip themselves to come out and to be productive members of our society. In the main, there are programs that take place. There are opportunities to rehabilitate. I believe that they fall below the requisite standard to get our people where they need to be, and that will be a priority of mine going forward. I believe if you just take the library, I went and I saw the library about 4 months ago, and I was really concerned at the state of the library. This doesn't fall to us not having the desire to do it. There are oftentimes budgetary constraints, and so now we have to look at what we want to do going forward. We believe that having our inmates doing productive things. We have a number of young men that are now incarcerated for periods exceeding 15 years due to significant convictions for violent crimes, including murder. Well, if you're facing a long period of incarceration, we need to ensure that these young men and women are engaged, that they've been given opportunities to rehabilitate themselves. There are notable people that have received degrees whilst in prison and have come back politics and are now in the practice of law. But that is not the story in the main, and that needs to be a priority. There is a person in charge of education in the prison and doing tests. A number of people did their GEDs last year, right? Had GED graduations. That takes place from year to year, but we can and we must do better.
Thank you very much. Now, you did answer my next question, but for the sake of the persons, I'll just ask it, and it's, quote, why does this jurisdiction lack a basic law library for us to fight for freedom and our basic human rights?
Well, we don't have to wait till we go to Westgate to fight for freedom. Yes, but it is an opportunity for us to understand that there are men and women that are incarcerated, and that is something that we must do. Ms. Palacio, people can drop books that are in excellent condition. If members in our community want to drop books by, we're doing a major drive. A number of law firms in Bermuda have recently donated a number of books. So before the men in the Westgate conversation with you, I met in their cells with them one-on-one. There was approximately 40 men that I met with one-on-one, and they shared with me what their concerns were about the physical plant, i.e. what we have to do to get the maintenance up to scratch. We understand that. I've met with the Prison Officers Association on a number of times. They have concerns about the facility, and we must fix that. The reformed Mr. Munns did an report on the prisons. We're looking at that. We're saying these are the things that we need to do, and this is a plan that we must do to make sure, number one, that our corrections officers are safe and that they are protected, and number two, that we have our men and women rehabilitated to come back out and join our community as well-adjusted individuals.
Thank you. And a follow-up to that would be if persons wanted to drop off like educational books or things that can be given, where can they send it to?
They can drop them at the Ministry of National Security Global House on Church Street.
Okay. And I did have one final question, which was for, that was six? I thought it was a follow-up. My apologies. I'm done.
Good evening, Don Burgess, Bermuda Broadcasting. Health Minister, how specifically does the change in country status help Bermuda?
Oh, it's critical because the reality is if people are looking to come to Bermuda, one of the things that they may do is look at the World Health Organization, look at countries and look at their status. And it suggests strongly by virtue of our status and our rating from international bodies such as PAHU that we have done a stellar job heretofore insofar as controlling COVID, controlling the spread through our testing regime, through the implementation of mitigants, through the beginning of our shelter-in-place episodes in March, and the steps that we've taken to this date, and the testing regime that has been quite accelerated over the last several weeks and months. All of that combined shows that Bermuda has reached a country status of, as what the World Health Organization has indicated, as sporadic. So I think it's critically important. If people are looking to travel to any jurisdiction, one of the things they're probably going to look at is what is the country classification? How safe is it? You can only reach that classification, excuse me, by taking the measures that Bermuda has taken heretofore.
Thank you very much. Madam Health Minister or Mr. Premier, one of the two of you, can you explain how tourists will be tested every 3 days when they're here? Will there be central points where they have to be tested, or will they be tested at their accommodation, or some sort of combo of the two?
Those, again, are measures that are being finalized. I don't want to preempt the cabinet discussions tomorrow, but those are matters that are squarely on the table of cabinet. Again, the subcommittee met this afternoon and went through the testing regime as well as the travel entry requirements for both locals and visitors alike. And those final discussions will take place tomorrow and will be articulated, I suspect, Thursday at the latest, but certainly at the Thursday's press conference, as the Premier indicated, you'll be receiving more information. But those are all part of the discussions that will take place tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Almost all the overseas news articles that refer to Bermuda reopening do not mention that visitors will have to be tested every 3 days or that they will have to pay for the testing. Shouldn't visitors be fully informed ahead of time? If visitors don't find out about the testing or the cost until after they arrive, is there a danger of a negative backlash against Bermuda?
I can't exactly agree with you. I was online today looking at a number of websites to see whether the jurisdictions were doing. And in all of those, they also mentioned Bermuda, and they mentioned that the likelihood would be a requirement of a PCR test at least 72 hours prior to arrival, as was announced by the Minister De Silva last week's press conference. So that information has been made available. I know that people are chomping at the bit to find out what are going to be our testing requirements. We receive a lot of questions at our COVID hotline. I'm sure tourism is asking questions, receiving a lot of questions, as we are as health, emails, etc. That information will be forthcoming, and we have made the announcement so far as it relates to the PCR testament and the requirement of that. So what was relayed by the Minister De Silva last week about the requirement of the 72-hour in advance PCR testing. Also, you would have heard that the Premier would have also announced that the fees associated with that will be absorbed by the passenger, but all of the details and the fine details will be revealed by within the next couple of days.
Yet all the articles that I've read does mention the 72-hour PCR testing, but none of them mention that they'll have to be tested every 3 days.
Okay.
And that's the part that I'm referring to.
Okay. Again, all of those details will be discussed tomorrow at Cabinet, and that information will be made public. I think it's fair to say that throughout the world, people recognize that this is an evolving situation, and that as the tide changes, so to speak, so will requirements. And every country is in the same in the same situation, excuse me, as Bermuda, as they're trying to navigate basically how do they open up their borders, yet at the same time continue to look for economic development for their country, but likewise balance that with the need to ensure that we protect those citizens that reside here. So we're all trying to facilitate that and move through the mechanisms of that at the same time. And I know that there's a lot of questions, and there will continue to be questions as this situation evolves, but I assure you that by Thursday's press conference, most of the questions that you're asking today will be answered.
That is the biggest point. Something that the Premier has been, through his leadership through this pandemic, that he's been quite clear on is the transparency and when the information becomes available to disseminate it publicly. And if you look at one of the things that the Premier has insisted on is the transparency piece, and when the information becomes available, giving it to the public, and this will be no different.
All right, thank you very much. Bermuda Broadcasting understands that 13 tourists arrived on the island via private jet last week. Can you confirm, and has the cabinet given the green light for visitors to begin arriving here?
I don't have the exact date of the order, and I should. I want to say June 5th, and I'd have to look through my documents, but there was the traveler's order was amended and it was revoked. I spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, and it was revoked to allow for visitors to arrive in Bermuda. So visitors can arrive in Bermuda. And whether it was 13, I can't give you the specifics as to what particular plane you're speaking about, but as of, I think it was June 12th, the traveler order was revoked, and therefore visitors are permitted to come to Bermuda.
What I can say, however, is that I remember that this question was asked by somebody else, and the notes which came up was that people do not see an arrival. Are you aware of an arrival of that number of tourists?
We are aware that a plane came to Bermuda that included tourists. We are not we are not clear on how many of them were tourists. People come to Bermuda on planes and it's for business. As you would know, we are now people have to do their yearly meetings in Bermuda, and a number of people come to Bermuda for those purposes and do vacation at the same time. But we have to get you the specific number of people that actually were on the plane specifically for vacation.
What is important to note, two things. Number one, as the Minister of Health had indicated, on the 12th of July, the law was changed. The 12th of June, the law was changed. So the law previously prevented anyone who was not normally resident on the island from entering the island. Now that the law has been changed, people who are not resident on the island are able to enter the island. What is important to note, however, that everyone who enters the island is subject to testing on arrival and 14-day quarantine.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We are hearing complaints from people who have received unemployment benefit checks being charged $35 by HSBC to cash them. These are HSBC checks from the Consolidated Fund. These checks are going to some of the neediest people. In this circumstance, would it be appropriate for the bank to waive this fee?
I have not heard that particular complaint, but in response to the answer to your question, I believe that it would be entirely appropriate. But that's something that we'll have to check and follow up with. I'm not sure if the government has the power to order a bank not to charge a particular fee, but I will certainly lead and impress upon the leaders at that particular organization that that's probably not the best keeping where we are right now, given the fact that these persons may not have bank accounts and may need to actually avail themselves of this service. But I will follow up on that. That's the first I'm hearing of it.
Thank you very much for your time and attention tonight.
All right. Thank you very much. I want to thank all members of the media for their questions. As the Minister of National Security identified that transparency is something that is important inside of democracy, and we hold these press conferences to make sure that we can get the tough and difficult questions and provide the answers to those questions. Before I end this evening, I want to give a special thanks to Miss Annette Dickinson of Crafted Creations for a beautiful Gombe themed mask that has a great message to Bermudians, and on it, it says to cool out. So with that, I wish everyone a very wonderful evening. I will see all of you here on Thursday, where, as the Minister of Health has indicated, we will be laying out the full requirements for travel. I know that persons were looking to hear some of those today. As we said, the Cabinet Committee met today. The Cabinet will consider all of those items tomorrow. And we will be unveiling those no later than Thursday at the press conference. So for everyone in Bermuda, thank you for your attention and good night.
Want to know your COVID-19 status?